Rachel.
How are you?
Oh, I am so happy. I have been rewarded. My patience has paid off. How about yourself?
I'm frustrated.
What? How could you be frustrated? We got worms.
We got worms, but we got a whole...
We got bored by the worm. That's what you live for. That's why we're called worm time. That's what the time is. Not riding them. Getting swallowed by them. Oh, we got it, Rachel. So why are you frustrated?
We'll get into it.
Oh, we better get into it. Well, how about you get us into the starting of the podcast?
Thank you for joining Yum Yum for Worm Time. We're called Yum Yum because Ryan,
That's me.
my husband,
Hello.
became obsessed with the phrase Yum Yum being used in Star Trek Discovery in a very unusual context for that phrase to be utilized.
Hmm?
And it was enough for him to be like, okay, we're making a podcast and we're calling it Yum Yum.
We sit down and we review episodes of science fiction television,
Episode by episode.
new and old, and this is a new series. It's fresh right now. It is Dune Prophecy, which is, of course, a prequel to the Dune story, and we're following a whole cohort of people, and we are 4 episodes in now, Rachel. How does that feel? 4 out
Halfway
of the
through?
6. We're over halfway through. There's only 6. So
Why
we're...
did I think that was 8?
Nope. You wish there was 8.
Oh,
She's actually wishing there was 12. Double the fun. So,
I'm wishing it had passion.
whoa, Rachel. You and I, we're going to have a real conversation today. I can already sense it. Because we are talking about Twice Born, which, according to the IMDb summary, goes as such. After nearly all the acolytes have the same nightmare, Tula attempts to understand the origins of their disturbing dreams. Meanwhile, on the eve of the Great Landsgrad
meanwhile.
meeting, Valia sets her plans in motion to redeem House Harkonnen. How do we pronounce the princess's name? It's Nyens? I can't remember what her name is.
Remember.
Well,
They
she
call her
confronts
the
her
Princess
father about rumors surrounding Desmond, and Kieran conspires to advance a rebel attack that the Sisterhood must try to thwart. Now, everyone, if you have not seen this episode, you should be warned. We're going to start talking about it in all of those juicy, juicy details. And Rachel, I can see that you're just ready to rip into this one. What are your thoughts on Twice Born?
How could such a mess be so boring?
What?
Like, there's a lot happening in this episode, and it feels like it means nothing and moves almost nothing forward. They are spending a lot of time talking about things like it's really dramatic and means something. And they're like, these moments are meant to be poignant, and it's just drab.
This episode broke you, huh? You've been obviously not a huge lover of Dune Prophecy. Last episode you were torn, and then you ripped. But now you seem anti the show. What did this episode finally do to push you to such negatives?
I don't
You've
know.
already been heading towards it, but
Yeah,
why
like,
this?
it's
Why this
just-
one? Because I'm curious. What about it?
I'm just tired of the wank.
You're tired of the wank? Well,
I'm tired of the wank, Brian. I'm
Well,
tired of it.
uh,
I'm done. I just want it to come and be over.
well, someone like myself who was a teen boy once, I can tell you that it's hard to grow tired of a wank. So I am going to break your heart, Rachel. This was the best episode of the show I've seen thus far. I had a good time with it. Why did I have such a good time? Now that's the question on my mind, because it's not so easy to just say, well, this, and this element, because a lot of what you're saying, I also agree with, and a lot of the problems that I've had with the series are still littered throughout this episode. But I thought that the pacing and tone of the episode was much more focused and in line with what I want from the show overall. There's plot lines like the sisterhood themselves that I don't give a shit about, but overall I thought this was a step in the right direction for the show. I know one aspect that really leapt out to me as a positive, which is...
Was it the music? Because we haven't discussed that yet.
We will. But it's the performances and the characters were allowed to be a lot more eccentric in this episode. It wasn't just relegated to Desmond Hart. It did start to branch out to other people, which was, such a relief, because you say it, the show's drab. It's dull, it's boring, it's plodding. And I've talked about it before, but the Dune universe can be accused of that very much so. But what I like about it, at least the Frank Herbert books that I've read, they have that veneer, but underneath it is just a bizarre world filled to the brim with kooky characters. And this series hasn't had kooky characters as much as you would hope.
You love your freaks.
It's not just about the freaks, but they bring an energy. And I thought this episode had a lot of energy to it. So, why don't we talk about the music? The yum-yum, as Rachel said, was a very strange, peculiar, odd moment from Star Trek Discovery. A character said yum-yum, and it didn't make any sense. It just really stood out. It ruined the mood, and it just lingered with us. And we do that with the music for Dune Prophecy, because I've actually found out. I haven't done too much digging into what the general populace's thoughts are in the show or any other reviewers, but I have heard bits and pieces, and the sound and music for this show isn't popular with other people as well. It's not just us. I always worry, are we just being too mean? But the music does stand out for other folks, it seems, and it stood out for us. What was your yum-yum music moment from Twice Born?
Was early on. It was the violin when Valia is with her nephew at House Harkonnen. Just the really high-pitched, stringy kind of violin that sounds like it belongs in an A24 trailer almost.
Oh, yes. I also had a music moment relating to Harrow Harkonnen, my favorite character. He loves whale fur and seed, or as he says it, whale seed. It was during the scene in which he was at his place and he had the lords come over and they were having a back and forth about, you should be the one that brings this to the council. And they were playing comedy music. The kind of whimsical... And it was I was waiting for Bones McCoy to make a line in this scene where he has a little jab and then Kirk laughs in the background. It made me think also of the early days of Babylon 5, in which Christopher Frank had to be dragged over and told by JMS to stop with the comedy music. I didn't think that there would be any levity and comedy-esque music in this show, and I apologize to the previous episodes for saying the music was intrusive, because that there made me actively annoyed, because the scene can be funny without you having the music being like, ha ha ha, it's a silly thing, it's a silly guy, he's a silly guy.
It's not meant to be funny in the scene. It really, the
scene is humorous.
But it's not a jaunty or good old laugh kind of thing.
Just rely on the actor. He's already doing the job for you. He's already doing a marvelous job.
And you meant to find it funny because the dramatic irony, if I'm using that term correctly.
You should be. That was the thing that stood out to me music-wise. So, Rachel, We're on opposite sides of this episode. You're not a fan, I am a fan. But how about we meet up and connect on something that I already said I'm not a fan of, but I don't know how you feel about it in terms of your negativity or not. Am I being too harsh on the sisterhood stuff? I just don't.
I don't care.
Love it that much. And we're dealing with them.
It feels very thin. And I believe that we are meant to care about the sisterhood and the acolytes and what's going on with them and the threat that it poses to the sisterhood in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't feel like a threat that's meaningful because it's shaken Tula because of how personal it is and how she's connected to Lila.
And that you can't control the acolytes once it starts to go in a certain direction.
But that doesn't make you think, oh yeah, this is a weak point, a point where the sisterhood almost crumbled, which is the way that the show is treating it in a way.
Because they're all about control, so they know how things work. They have a very regimented thing, hence the genetic library. Oh, we have Desmond Hart's blood. We'll automatically be able to know who he is and where he's from. Like, that's the sisterhood. So this episode shows them encountering something, thinking that they have it under control, and they don't, and it freaks them out. That I understand. That I get.
Yes, but it's just like, well, why do I care? Why should I care about this organization where I know that they will be fine?
The prequelness of it is not helping.
I know that it will be fine, and they keep on being like, yes, our order is young. And it's just like, well, how long are you going to be a young order for? Well, honestly.
The old lady saying it is fairly old, so, you know. You know what really is at the center of this all? Not just the prequelness of it. It's because there is not a story here, but mystery, intrigue. When you actually sum it up, here's what happens, okay? Suddenly, the acolytes all have a dream. All of them except for one of them, because mystery. We gotta have a mystery there. Why is she immune? We gotta
have somebody to report it.
We have to have someone to generate conversation for the audience of why doesn't Sister Jen get affected? Is it because she opposed the agony? She was the only one that opposed it in the last episode, so does that make her immune? Is she a living machine? Is she a Gola? Is she whatever nonsense? They have a joint dream that leads one of them to almost kill herself. And there's all these spooky imagery that relates to Arrakis and the worm, and is that a living machine in the dream? All of this stuff to ignite intrigue and mystery, okay? That's there. Tula decides that she's going to force them all to have the dream again so that they can get evidence of what it is so that they have information. She's going to use the spice to bring it out of them. Okay? She's told, don't do that. And then she does that and she can't control it. And we get a scary scene of them drawing over and over again. These
charcoal drawings are always creepy.
They're always creepy. And it freaks them out and they don't know what it means. There's spooky eyes in them. Okay? And then at the end of all of that, Tula is sad and talking to Lila and has a fake out dream in which one of the acolytes was going to rat on her for having murdered or been complicit in the murder of the sister that we saw in the very first episode.
That annoyed me for what I think is an unusual reason.
Go ahead.
Which is, as soon as that character was dumb enough to confront Tula head on, I was like, oh, I thought it was a dream before, but now I know.
Because we don't know anything about that character to believe that to be true. And that's where my point was going to end. The whole thrust of why I summarized that stuff is there's not really a plot. It's a bunch of intriguing, spooky imagery and teasing of things to come. Ooh, what does that mean? Ooh, what does that mean? Which is not invalid. You can make that a story. You can make that a plot. It's not always the best, but if you have interesting characters, fine. The only two characters we have that we know anything about, like, not just who they are, but, like, who they are, like, what their deal is, their personality, is Tula and Jen. That's it. So when they start to tease, like, this acolyte here is capable of this, or she's going to slit her throat, I don't know who she is. I don't know her name. When she came on the screen in the start of the episode, I'm like, I don't know her name. And it's not just I don't know her name, I don't know who she is. I don't know her character. I don't know who any of the acolytes are.
I have no reason to give a shit about any of that.
And it goes to, I don't know who the sisterhood is, really. We have all of these acolytes and they all seem friendly and bubbly and kind and naive. And yet the sisterhood is inherently insidious and powerful. But we aren't really demonstrated that. And it's not just because I know where the Bene Gesserit go. Well, they're supposed to be that way in this show. We see that with every other sister outside of the actual sisterhood. So when we're in the sisterhood, I'm like, okay, they're in training to be freaks, but even the ones in charge are fairly mild. None of them are creepy or have extra dimensions, so all we have to go off of is, so Rachel, what do you think those eyes mean? Do you think it's a living machine? That's the best you can get out of this plot. There's not much
I didn't even bother to question any of that. I was like, oh, imagery. That means something. Just like the opening sequence.
It's not as particularly engaging to us because it is a story strand that mainly exists for the sake of engagement in this particular fashion of like, what does that mean? Could this be that? But there's not much thematically speaking. There's not much character-wise speaking. What's the takeaway? What's the message? And what's the story that you walked away with after this episode? There wasn't really one. It was just a bunch of questions being asked, a bunch of things being raised to you. Tula gets something, which is she's overeager, right? She's aiming a bit too high above her station. She thinks she has things in control, but she knows deep down she doesn't. Hence that fake out dream. That fake out dream, whether it's brought on by Lila or whether it was semi-real or whatever, in terms of this episode, it is her repression. It's her guilt. It's all of these things that the sisterhood apparently should have bred out of you by now, trained out of you, coming to the surface and freaking her out. That's it. And what do you think about that stuff? Because you and I have had some friction about Tula. I like Tula more than you, I think.
Yeah. It just falls flat to me because it feels like the show is like, well, we have to have a plot here. So this is it. And it's just like, okay. But because I'm not attached to the characters and there's no thematic resonance, I just get bored. Because I'm like, yeah, you are doing a good performance, but I don't feel anything towards that or about that because you haven't made me give a shit.
What is, honestly, without just boiling it down into the way that you just did for that, what is the point of the sisterhood story in this series? Like, what's the take? Like, what do you get out of it? What's its purpose to you? Deeper than just this is what happens in it.
I think it's to give insight into the sisterhood and the way that it works and the way that it is an environment in which it fosters this sort of dependence and acceptance of doctrine and how it drills it into you in various different ways, and that there are people on the inside that don't necessarily agree with that, but they don't leave. They stay and they become immersed and they eventually accept and just continue to toe the line. Because that's the only thing that we've seen. We haven't seen anybody who successfully walked away from the sisterhood.
I really like that. I think that was a very succinct breakdown, and it was very eye-opening that that's what you get, because that's what I want to. I don't see that stuff, personally, in their story. I don't see that, as much as I want to. There's elements of it, very briefly, but I don't even see it enough to verbalize it the way you did, because what I get out of it, it came to the
English
forefront.
teacher for the win. I can bullshit.
But the thing is, I want to know what the show thinks of the Bene Gesserit and the Sisterhood. Does it have an opinion, or does it want to play devil's advocate? Because that's interesting. If it wants to play if it wants to play it in the middle of, like, they may appear sinister, but the overall goal is for, in quotations, a greater good. Do the ends justify the means? All of that stuff is very interesting with the Bene Gesserit, because the Bene Gesserit, for a good chunk of the story...
Even what Desmond Hart's accusing them of being.
Yeah.
Like, just being a new replacement for people to just hand over their power and their agency.
It's a new tyranny. Exactly. And that there gets a lot more conversation with characters in the Imperium than what we see in the Sisterhood. What I got out of this episode, what I got out of the previous episodes is, this is all the prequel bullshit. This is where all the prequel bullshit is. Because this episode, in the last one, it's like, well, is Lila getting done this way? Is this a precursor to Spice Agony? Is this a weird kind of axolotl tank? And this episode was very much like, fear is the mind killer. That's a thing that the Sisterhood is all about. But they haven't come up with it yet. And this episode will keep dancing around that sentiment over and over and over again and use almost the quote, is this the origins of fear is the mind killer? Oh, fear is a lot. And that's what I get out of the Sisterhood side of this series a lot more, is just the filling in of things that I don't care about personally, but they don't even make it more satisfying with a very compelling story. It just is, it's just not good. That's the point. It just doesn't come together. And we can sit here and say, what do you think this is? Like, why do you think Sister Jen's immune? What do you think Lila is? What do you think the spooky imagery that they're drawing is? Was that scene, okay, honest question, the scene where they did the charcoal drawings and they all started going in unison and the music swelled and Tula was freaking out, did that hit for you?
No. Because I never felt like they were in any specific kind of danger. Because it feels like, okay, so they're doing this to do this. Like, it very much felt mechanical. Because, okay, so they've had this intriguing incident and now they're responding to it. So it's like, okay, that's happening. And it didn't feel like an escalation from the nightmare. It felt like, ooh, spooky. But not anything more than that. Like, the depth isn't there.
No, I thought it was corny. I thought it was cheesy, in fact.
Oh, yeah.
I laughed because it is horror 101. The only thing that they didn't have on their side is something I've brought up before, which is they're not children. If they were literally children, then it would be definitely the most baseline level of this creepy drawings from children. Okay, they're just creepy drawings from.
I believe that they're younger than they look. Because Lila's meant to be a sweet summer child. Who's barely had a chance to live.
But now she has the spice eyes, the blue eyes, and is she like Desmond in her own way? Whoa, she's something new. Is she an abomination? I don't care about that.
We've seen plenty of the other sister who has the spice eyes that works at the bar.
Yes, but her eyes are still different to Lila's. Look, we can keep ragging on the sisterhood side. It's just never connected. And maybe it just is a greater example of that the Bene Gesserit should not be the main characters. They should always be playing off of somebody else. In the later Frank Herbert books, they are much more the main characters, but you have someone like Duncan Idaho bouncing off of them. He's observing what they are like, and so it makes it like there's a chalk and cheese to it, right? Because they're inhuman in a lot of ways. Like, they're very calculating, cold, and ruthless, and it's hard to connect with them outside of just Machiavellian fun. And this episode, I think, really brought that to light with Valia, like modern-day adult Valia, like older Lady of Valia, I thought finally was interesting. Because she's teamed up with her family. And we see her start to come out of her shell. We see the real version of her, not just the Mother Superior. And we see how she gets to wear all of these different personas, depending who she's interacting with. And we see that her uncle fucking makes her angry because he knows what she's doing and he isn't playing along. And that was fun. That was good. And it just brought to my mind, like, what I was saying about, like, perhaps the Bene Gesserit aren't great as the main person. It makes me think of, say, in Star Trek. You know who the main character of the original series is? It's Kirk. Mm-hmm. You know who isn't? It's not Spock. Spock is a main character, but he's not the main character. Because if he was the main character, he'd be harder to connect with. But it works the way it does because him and Bones and Kirk bounce off of each other.
Contrast.
So we can still enjoy the Vulcans as a group, but they're not our main people because they're very cold and impenetrable in a lot of ways, but you need that contrast. This episode, Valia finally had it. Properly had it. Not just one brooding conversation with Desmond Hart. She had the whole episode with her family, Desmond, the Imperium, and I thought it was great. I thought she finally got to come alive, and we got a lot of just internal Harkonnen drama, and I'm speaking praises of it, but what were your opinions of this overall, especially because you're feeling a lot less enthused by the episode, but do you feel at least a tinge of this?
Where it was going to end the whole time, because it's just like, okay, so they're making a big deal about it being the High Council meeting what the fuck, and that dead boy's dad is fucked off, which leaves an opening, a seat at the council. And it's just like, well, they've really established that the Harkonnens want to raise their station again, and they are still one of the houses, so they have a right to be there.
And they have a relationship with all of them because they do trade. They are like the trading family. And
like last episode when it was just like, okay, we have a rebellion. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, okay, so they're going to finally try and attack, but
it's going to get thwarted.
It's going to get thwarted, and the plan is going to be for the sisterhood to step in so that they get the good graces, but it's not going to work out, either because Desmond foils it or Kieran backs out because
he's a pussy.
Something to do with the princess. That was my thought.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold.
Oh, yes. I think there is still material there to feast upon, even though you know how things are going to play out. I also knew how most of this was going to play out, but I found that there was more than just enjoyment, but there was actual stuff to ponder and consider with Valia in this episode. The uncle calls it out. He's like, she's going to stab you in the back. She's using you. She's in a corner and she's come here. She doesn't care about us. She only cares about herself. But I thought that the dilemma was still very good for the fact that they have to use her still. They have to use her. And how much of her stuff is driven by the sisterhood and how much is it driven by her thinking her own house should be the top dogs and just her own personal self-interests? And all of those are true. All of them are true. That's what I found very, riveting in the episode of she makes it a point of fact, like, yeah, if you, specifically you, didn't fuck with me, we would have been the top house. We would have been ruling. I would have gotten us there. You didn't trust me because you think so low of me. And guess what? You're right to think low of me because I don't care for you. Fuck you. Go die. I don't give a shit. Right? But I also care about the sisterhood.
Continuing to insult her when she's holding back his medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, how fucking dumb does he have to be?
Well, it's not just dumb, but it is, he isn't what she is, which is, she's the Mother Superior, yeah? Her whole training is to be like, well, I'm going to be in control of my emotions, right? He's had decades worth of venom built up in him to spit at her, and that's his weakness. That's his literal downfall. She isn't immune to that in this episode either. That's what I love, is he brought out that venom within her that she tries to pass off and say, I don't have that. I'm the Mother Superior of the sisterhood. I play 4D chess. I don't play checkers. But we see he forces her to do that. He shows that he shows that she is human, that she isn't perfect. And I like that. So yeah, she's holding back the medicine and he's like, you could say he's an idiot for doing what he's doing, but I thought it just was true to what we had seen of these two characters, like their relationship. And what was more like, again, what I found more honest was him making her yell and making her have to defend her point. And actually, in so defending her point, she's undermining her point. I love that stuff. I wish there was more of that in the episode. I thought the uncle really got to stand out as a character. I'm actually kind of bummed that they're killing him. Like, this is the stuff that bothers me. We're on fast forward. There's not enough time to really appreciate this for all it's worth. Like, you can say, I see it coming a million miles an hour, like a million miles away. So them going through it fast is less annoying, but honestly...
No, but I want them to take something slower so that I actually can feel something about what's going on. I am not at the point where I'm like, I want to be fucking done with this. I want it to be good.
A lot of people are having a grand time with this series, and you and I have just been in a state of mild flux, and now it's getting a lot higher for you. I just love this house. I think these characters, all three of them, are the most lively in the episode that isn't Desmond Hart. Like, her nephew, Harrow, he's a great character. Like, unabashed, not just because he's a kooky little guy, but, like, he is played differently to everyone, not just in the performance, but in the writing as well. He's meek and mild and subdued, and yet he has these high ambitions, and he just wants respect. Like, I actually root for him because I get it. Like, I get it. He's not just solely like Valia, where he wants to rule all of humanity and whatever. And it's not just like his uncle, where he's got all his personal grievances. He, as a person, has lived generations of shame, and he just wants to be seen. It's as simple as that, and it could grow into something more negative like with Valia. But at the moment, he is at this position where he is a joke, but that's a fun character. Like, he's a joke to everyone, and he was a joke to you and I at the start, but I found it a bit of a relief, honestly, that they actually slowed down in the episode to give him more moments that weren't just, ha-ha, he's a joke. They obviously did the ha-has, but
I really like the moment where he comes back and he's getting a drink. And he's just like, just leave it to his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave it.
It was a bad day today. I liked when they did the truth saying on him and just read all of him, and you got to see his reaction of shock and terror at their abilities. Because he underestimates Valia. He's like, oh, she's an asset and she's a family member, so she's always going to be on our side. She's family, and she's giving us the resources. But then they used it on him, and you could see in that moment he became the uncle. It was like, oh, okay, you're a threat. I thought that was really well played, really well handled. The Harkonnen stuff, like in Dune in general, they're fun. They're enjoyable. They're over the top, but they're Machiavellian, but they humanized them in this episode. They humanized them. They had layers, which they've been trying to do since the start. Like, I'm actually kind of more drawn to this angle of the show of this family that is disgraced, perhaps not rightfully so or not, and in so trying to clear up their name, they're just further damning it. Like Harrow, for instance, he just further damns their family because he followed through on this plan of hers and it backfired in their face. Not in a way that he expected, and not even directly because of her, but because of other circumstances. What was her whole play, though, in this episode? So you said you saw it coming from a mile away. So
her plan was to foil the rebellion that she herself has created so that she can prove her worth once again to the Emperor.
That's her plan. She knows that it's going to happen. She knows when it's going to happen, who's involved. And she's playing the game. She's going to let it play out, and she'll personally step in and save the day. That's the gamble. And she knows it could fail and the Emperor could die, but she doesn't mind.
It's worth the risk. And that's the same sort of logic that Harrow is using in doing the meeting at the council and to, put his trust in Valia.
The resistance itself is such a nothing. You hit the nail on the head in a previous discussion, but the way it is flagged up is done in such a clearly obvious way that there's no point in even examining what the existence of a resistance means in the story. All it's there to do is this. Valia thinks she has an ace up her sleeve, and then she doesn't. That's what it's there for. I don't really get much out of the actual conversation of what you tend to in a story like this of a resistance group. Are they good? Are they bad? What are they fighting for? What are they fighting against? What is society? What is the structures? Is it a worthy cause? Okay, so it's a resistance that's been made by the thing that they're fighting against anyway, so that's dramatic.
Has more dimension to it than the rebellion in Star Wars.
I don't think so. I don't even agree with that.
No. Like, I mean, in the sense of like, are they on the right side or the wrong side?
Oh, yeah.
Not in general.
But the resistance, it just goes to what we were saying about the sisterhood. At the end of it, the most depth I can get out of it is me personally raising questions, but in this case, they're not ones I think the show are even asking with them. You know? You know what I mean by that?
I get you.
Well, I mean, there's this whole conversation between Kieran and the princess. That's like the heart of this particular strand, and the princess basically takes control.
No sex this episode.
No sex. They threatened it, but they didn't give us it. The princess, she turns against her family. she joins the resistance.
She publicly stands up against her father.
She publicly stands up against her father, and she helps aid the resistance group, or at least in part. She helps kind of push things along. That's something. But what do you actually feel about that? Because, got to give it, she's been a consistent character. Like, she's also been a character that we've enjoyed, and this is a further growth and breaking point for her.
It's another thing that's just, it's not a surprise. She's been not on board with her father and sort of by extension her mother, because like we know that the mum's behind a bunch of bullshit that's happening. So her being like, okay, well, you're not sending me away? Well, fuck you. I'm gonna pull some shit here. I will stand up for what I believe in. I will not bow.
Is her doing this just a rich girl getting back at daddy move, or is it something more? Is it something that you just said, like it's a cause that she believes in, she cares about, she's morally affronted?
She is sick of being a pawn. And she thought that she was out of that stage of her life. She thought, okay, I've got to marry this kid. I'm going to get like 10 years on my own. I'm going to be on this planet. I'm going to be learning all of these skills to make me more powerful so that I can wield the power that I do have as a woman in this Imperium.
But is she a good person? You would say so, yes, but would she have done anything about this murder and any of this stuff if the Emperor didn't take away her leaving?
If she wasn't being negatively affected. If it wasn't, bad for me. I don't think she would. Because she is smart enough that she wants to do the best play for the most control. And sort of that blinds her in some ways to the bigger picture because she is focused on where she fits as a player.
What I find to be the crowning jewel of all of this is the performance. Because she plays it in a very honest, sweet, noble, genuine way in which you can be, follow along of like, no, the princess is a wholly good person and she's doing what's right and it may be inconveniencing for her father or even Kieran. She will have this conversation with him in a shady club and they'll have an emotional bond here and she's, standing up for truth and justice and she's abhorring what's going on. She's trying to convince her brother to, break free of the shackles of all this stuff. You can believe all that. But when you look at it all, it's very much in line with what you're saying and what we're getting at of how much of that is actually true, or is it just she's doing that as a reaction and a response because she's not getting what she wants. And usually when you say that paints a person as a very vain, selfish, or even bratty character. Like the bratty princess who her daddy didn't give her what she wanted, so she joined the resistance. Yes, that's a character type that she does, in a way, fall into. But I think there's enough kinks in the story with her and her characterization and that performance that makes her one of the best parts of the show.
She is a standout, and she's been like holding steady in that position throughout the whole show. We've always been interested with what's happening with her, and a major part of that being successful is the performance.
The Resistance has the sister, like undercover sister, in charge of it, and they get given from an Ixian, who's a faction in the Dune universe that they haven't really gotten into, but here they are, first Ixian, and it's just a cyberpunk loser. Awesome. Great. and he gives them living machine technology as the weapon. And that's taboo, right? Oh no, you can't be doing that. That's bad. We hate these living machines, and it's going to be a big point in the episode because Desmond Hart has a real fucking hard-on for living machines. He really doesn't like them, and that's whether that's true or that's the scapegoat he uses for his actions, we can have a bit of a conversation about. But Kieran, he doesn't get found out. He's the only one in the Resistance that doesn't get found out.
Yeah, because Desmond was tracking people down through the sale of the living machine. And for some reason, Kieran wasn't implicated, I guess.
And he walks away. He gets to skate on by for now.
The Reverend Mother that's involved wasn't caught either.
Do you have any thoughts and feelings on Kieran Atreides?
No.
No. He's, you see, I'll put it now. I'm putting it down now. He's the worst character in the show.
Yeah, he's a nothing burger.
He's the worst because all he is just a handsome man. That's it. He's just a noble, good, handsome man. He's an Atreides, so you know he's good? Okay. He lives. I don't care what he will go on to do in the future. It is what it is. You know, he's gonna wheel and deal, and maybe he'll help take down someone later or save the princess. There you go. This episode, though, there's a big shake-up in the status quo, Rachel. The sands are shifting in terms of the power in the Imperium, and we get some moves played by some people. You want to talk about some of that stuff? The Empress, she shows her true colors. She's the one that basically gives Desmond Hart the thumbs
Kill
up
order.
to make his little SS unit and go find the Resistance.
And again, that's not surprising because we've seen that she wants to take the reins back from the sisterhood, and Desmond is giving her the opportunity to do that, and she sees a play and she makes the play, and it works out for her in this episode. She's exactly where she wants to be. She is at the top and in control. Or so she thinks.
Yes. Desmond shows himself to be a lot scarier in this episode than the Emperor and Empress were willing to take. Even though they knew. I really like seeing...
Witnessing it is always different.
I really like seeing just the different houses and the council, and the Speaker of the House being Jonathan Nolan, who is the uncle of Christopher Nolan, and he's an actor. He's been in a bunch of things. He was in Person of Interest as the lead villain. So he's been around the block. It was great to see him. I liked the scene between the Emperor and Desmond when after Desmond's used his freak powers and he's like bleeding from the back, and the Emperor's just like touching his bare back, and it was very homoerotic. I'm like, yes, see, this is what I want more of. I want him to be like, oh, lovely Desmond. I need more of that stuff. But how do you feel about the Emperor? Because he makes the public know what he is doing, and that he will continue to do it.
Yeah. And he is kind of forced into that, but he's like, okay. And you do get the sense that is him wanting to be more like how he described his father, and the response that his father would get walking into a room as opposed to him.
Yes. I thought that Mark Strong, he's a capable actor. He's a reliable actor. I've always loved him in things I've seen. Rock and Roller, He's so good in that movie. I love him in Stardust as well. I don't like his performance in this show, and it breaks my heart.
We really liked him in the first episode.
Because there was more and less to the character. Like, there was more potential for what he is, and now there was less definition. Now we have more of he's just a spineless guy, and it feels very one note in his portrayal.
He's the pawn, and it's just like, oh.
When he has to decide in the council, in the Landsraad chamber, that he's going to throw his weight around and that he is behind what Desmond says, it was so hammy, amateurish, telegraphed, the way that Mark Strong physically portrayed it. It's just like everything is so obvious, and I didn't really feel connected to the character in any way. Like, I didn't feel like, oh, he's making a bad choice here, or oh, he's being played, or he's cornered. It just, all I saw was the actor, and that says a lot because I think Mark Strong is a fantastic actor, and I've never really felt this from him before, so it says a lot to me. But I did like it as a story beat, though. I thought it was great that Desmond Hart just openly says to everyone, yeah, I did this, and I'll do it again. Watch me do it again.
But it's an execution, not a matter.
Because he had living machine technology, and we say no to that wagging of the finger. Let's bring in some people who try to just assassinate you all right now with living machine technology, and I'll burn them all in front of you with my mind powers, and you'll all watch, and it'll be funny, and we'll all have a good laugh, and he'll give an insane monologue. Oh my God. Rachel, the accent work in this show, out the window. They're all Australians. The Australians in this episode did not mask the accent. They just gave up.
Not even a little.
Travis Fimmel as Desmond Hart, he's doing that fake Euro Ragnar voice, but not in this monologue. He went full Aussie, and I loved it. I was clapping. I was like, we've made it to space again. We haven't been here since Farscape. We're back in space. I'm loving it. We're back in the pitch black days where it's like, it's not Australia, mate, it's space. And I guffawed at it. I was just so happy. I mean, is it me, because I'm more of a fan of this episode, or do you see it as well, that something happened here in episode 4 where a lot more of the performances were allowed to be playful and allowed to be energetic and allowed to be
like it was directed very differently than the previous ones.
And how do you react to that? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Does that feel inconsistent? Does it feel like it lines up? Does it open it up for you, or does it repel you?
It felt inconsistent, and it was done in a way where I was just like, okay, I feel like this is down just to the director's style, not the overall direction of this season.
Would it be better if there was more of this stuff in the series? Or do you think that it would take it away?
I think it would if it was still trying to do the things that it's trying to do.
What about the Denis Villeneuve movies? They managed to pull it off, and they have a lot of these type of performances. You know, you have the Harkonnens and that. You have Gurney. Lady Jessica in the second one is very heightened as well. Like, that still managed to stay in the lane. So why can't it be like this for the show?
Because that's not the lane that it's chosen. And it doesn't feel like, oh, we're dipping into this. It just feels like, oh, okay, we're doing that now.
But how is it not trying to, like, it's clearly aping off those movies. Like, the look of it, the feel of it, the music, the way that people mutter their lines. Like, it is trying to emulate and evoke those, but yet it doesn't understand, like, you need these type of heightened characters in there.
No, because it's trying to be a prestige drama.
But if there is more of this show, and they learn from an episode like this to have a few more characters be able to do a Desmond Hart or a Harrow Harkonnen or even the Emperor, I think it would be a net positive. Or even with Valia. Valia gets a lot more animated in this episode too. I think it would be an overall net positive because during the scene, you know what I wasn't... okay, so Desmond Hart reveals his powers to everyone. And at the start of it, I was thinking in the lines of how the show usually does this stuff of like, oh, that's a dramatic move. I wonder how this will play out and so on. Like we were saying about the sisterhood, I'm engaging on it on purely like writing level. But because Travis Fimmel was going for it and the guy who plays Harrow Harkonnen was going for it and the Emperor was going for it, I completely stopped thinking like that, and I was just in the scene. I was like, yeah, this is crazy. Like, this is insane.
Oh,
like, this person's screaming,
point.
And we get to see their teeth melt. I was like, holy crap,
I'm envious of that.
But it helped.
Because I just kept on being like, oh, okay, so they're doing that, and oh, the CG in this is pretty good, but, maybe they could have used some real smoke.
It's always bad when they have the fake smoke and fire. You can always tell. You can never unsee it. Desmond uses his powers as said. Rachel's getting tired of it, everyone. I just said Desmond uses powers again, and Rachel yawned and just rolled her eyes like, yeah, he used them. But we got a flashback, POV of him getting consumed by the worm.
Yeah.
And a thing inside of it with the glowing eyes and a robotic voice talking to him, and then it's in his eyes. So what does that mean? We know he got given vision from the worm, from Shai-Hulud and all that. So what's the deal? Like, that's the question. What's his deal? He starts bleeding from his back every time he uses these powers. I don't know.
Or is that a thing that he does?
I made
is
it
a
seem
flagellation thing?
No, because they started to burst out in the court, in the council. So,
but the way that like Mark Strong was looking at them and talking about them in the next scene made me question that.
I thought it was, these happen when you use your powers, and he's like, yeah, and I've used them a lot, as you could see on his back. That was my read. I don't know. Is he real? Like, is he a real person, Desmond Hart? Is he a guy with powers? Because he bleeds. And the sisters got his blood, and they're so sure that they'll be able to track him down. But I imagine that there will be some thing that stops them from doing it. Is he a living machine? Is that the thing? Because he's got the glowing eyes, or are they trying to lead you down that so obviously that it won't be that?
I don't know, but it's so obvious that won't work. Because, like, Desmond has been able to play them successfully, so for him to be as careless as to just leave his blood around, but like also he doesn't necessarily know about the genetic library.
Or does he? How much does and doesn't? How much does he know? How much does Desmond Hart know? He makes a point to antagonize our Mother Superior about the stuff he knows and stuff that he is aware of and that he's allowing her to keep around. He hasn't killed her. He's letting her live because he wants to disgrace and humiliate her. He wants to destroy the sisterhood, not just kill them. He wants to destroy them. He wants to eradicate them, not just through just killing them. He wants to ruin their name, and he's doing it in this way, proving his allegiance to the Emperor, whether it's true or not. I don't really know enough about the living machines to know what the capabilities are. The show hasn't given us enough to go on. We saw in the prologue of the show that they were like Terminator machines, like they were like big robots that they shot. And then in every other scene, they've been like little gadgets. And/or we saw with the sisterhood, an AI, like a sentient AI. So can they do something like this to Desmond Hart? Like, is he a robot?
I don't know.
Is he a person that's been resurrected as a cybernetic puppet man?
Maybe.
He's not a Gola, is he? I don't think he's a Gola, but maybe he is. What's a Gola? Well, Rachel, it's this. They haven't explained it. That's what I'm getting at. Like, the living machine stuff, they've brought it up in pretty much every episode. I didn't realize at the beginning of the show that was going to be such a big sticking point.
No.
Now, do you think he genuinely is upset at the idea of living machines? Because he's making that his, like, sticking point in this episode.
No, I think that's just his in and his play. Like, the Empress brings that to him.
Yeah, and but it keeps linking. Like, he executed the kid because the Emperor asked him to, but he seemed annoyed about the living machine thing, and he's bringing it up here as like, they're using living machines, so I've got to execute him. I think it's also just him putting on what everyone would find acceptable for him to do these murders. Like, well, living machines almost did wipe us out, so fuck whoever uses them, right?
Yeah.
Even though he himself might be part living machine, or who knows what. Anything else you want to say about the episode? About the Imperium side of things, the drama, the Desmond, the Emperor, the Sisterhood?
No. I'm sorry, but I don't. Like, it is all stuff that happens. And it's just the link in the chain for the next thing. And because I don't care about any of them, it's just like, oh, I could say something about that, or I could half-ass this, or you know. But most of it I've just forgotten.
It's going to be me podcasting on my own by the end of the series, I feel. Oh, Rachel. Come on, they had a big worm eat you in this episode. How could you forget that? That's something. I have a few things I want to raise. Just nerd crap that shouldn't matter, but it does to me. Okay? So, we get a mention of mentats in this episode. We just get a mention of them. They do exist. I said in a previous, like, a part of the prequelness of it all, of like, ooh, we don't have mentats because we haven't heard about them. We haven't seen them. And they're raised here. And it annoys me. It annoys me greatly. Because in a series that's dealing with the living machines, as they call them, and dealing with the consequences and the repercussions of the Butlerian Jihad, or the living machine wars, as they're calling them in this show, it's strange that near the end of the first season, we just get an offhanded mention of mentats. Why aren't they in the show? You're making a huge deal about living machines, and mentats exist in part because of all of that. You should show how society has managed to fill in the void of the living machines. Mentats are a part of it. The Ixians are another part of it. The Guild is a part of it. And we haven't really seen any of those people. They've just been mentioned, or you get a little quick wink nod reference, but it's strange to me. It's strange to me that the Emperor just only has one of the sisters, but he doesn't have a mentat around. Like, even just as a visual thing to let us know, like, okay, these are their people computers. Where are they at? It's so, like, I was accepting in the narrative.
Where are they within this world? And then they're just like, oh, they are here, but they're not present, so.
It was a case of we checked a box, but in so checking the box and so referencing them and so mentioning the name, it brought up questions that the story shouldn't be bringing up. Okay? If you don't want to have mentats in your story, fine. If they never mention them in this season, I wouldn't care. I would not be bringing this up. I would have just chalked it up to another part of, like, this is a story they're telling, and it's a prequel, so maybe the mentats aren't as huge of a thing, and the Ixians and the Guild, well, the Guild is big, but, like, I can understand it. But they brought them up. It annoyed me. It annoyed me, and then we end the episode with a cliffhanger, a big reveal that Sister Theodosia is most likely a face dancer, a shapeshifter. And the problem is, I don't know jack shit about Theodosia, so when she reveals that she's this, I don't care.
It's just a tool for Valia to use.
Yes, but see, it was supposed to be dramatic and poignant because she promised that she would never ask this of Theodosia, and their relationship is so well defined and nuanced. So when it finally hit this, you know what it made me think of, Rachel? We covered The Expanse.
Yes, I did.
There was a moment in The Expanse, 3 seasons in, when James Holden is considered to be insane, and Amos is going to incapacitate him. And he says, hey, how many times have I asked you to trust me before? He's like, you never asked. It's like, I'm asking you now, trust me. And that means something, and he uses Amos's code of conduct and his honor and his methods and his mentality to get him to do something he wouldn't have done otherwise. But because their relationship was so defined and so close-knit, it works. I use that as a bigger example just for this, where I don't know these two ladies' relationship to each other. So when she forces Theodosia to finally use her shape-shifting abilities, and it's supposed to be a big thing, not really. The only big thing it is for me, I can point and go, is that a face dancer? That raises questions. And for you to say, huh? Because that's what you said.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. Suspenseful music plays.
I don't like the way that they visualized how face dancers change their look. I don't know how I thought it did in the book. I always just thought it was a lot more putty-like, and if David Cronenberg was in charge of it type aesthetic, while this goes with the translucent CG crunchy, which it's fine. So, Rachel, here we are at the end of the episode. And obviously, we're going to give it a rating of yum being bad or yum being good. We know what your rating's going to be. So say it anyway and give your final stance on the episode.
So I've been trying to keep track of in my notes if I give things a yum or a yum. So when I go back for the season recap, I have a log of that information. And a couple of episodes, Ryan was just like, but you're not writing what you gave it, right? You're leaving that up and, being open to changing your mind throughout the discussion. But weirdly not with this one. I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna admit from the drop that it didn't work for me, and I just left a note for myself. I give this a yum because yum. And now I have to come up with what follows that. But I give this a yum because it's over halfway through the season and I'm not invested. I give this a yum because it feels trite and regurgitated, even though this is not a part of the Dune world that we have seen before. I give this a yum for the music. I give this a yum for just disappointing me.
It's always difficult. One of the things you went through there, I have a difficult time. I've always had a difficult time of how do you rate and enjoy an episode? Do you enjoy it in isolation? Do you enjoy it as a part of the momentum of the story and season? How much of a curve do you do it on? Because if we're going through the season and as an individual episode, I think I rate this I do. I rate this a yum. My first yum of Dune Prophecy.
Yum.
I think, is there a way, because I don't know the future of this show, are they going to make more seasons of this? Or is this it? I don't know. I know it has had a troubled production. We went through that at the beginning. There's a reason why we're here, because it's messy. And I think it's fair to say, you can see it. You can see the mess. Warts and all, there's the gleam of the prestige TV over it, but once you really focus in on it, it's sloppy. It's a messy show, but I kind of love it for that at the same time. This is one where I didn't find the episode boring. That's a huge praise of it as well. I just didn't find it boring, but I want to get this opinion from you. We've had this back and forth many times on the podcast, and we're having it on a community Discord, because if people join our Patreon, you get these episodes early and you can chat on our Discord about these episodes. We're having a back and forth discussion on there about like the classic age-old thing of not enough episodes in a season. We're getting shorter and shorter. Oh, back in the day we could have 22 episodes. Back in the day we could have 15. Back in the day we can have 10. Now we have 6. And is that bad? Like, are you incapable, or are you hamstrung or limited to a degree in which these criticisms that we make feel, well, it's unfair that they only have 6 episodes. They can't do all of these things that you want in only 6 episodes. They can't only do them in 10. They can't only do them in 15. They can only do them in 20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that in relation to this show? Because
there's always a justification for it. But you either adjust the time or you adjust the scope. That's the simple thing of it. They knew that they had 6 episodes, right?
I don't know.
Like, well, they knew that they didn't have 22. We can safely assume that. But we know from what we do know of the production that there wasn't a drive to tell a specific story. There wasn't a heart to this. So the fact that it is messy and there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they've taken a bit from this book and they've done this part here and they've skipped that part there and they're doing this whole other thing. It's just like, okay, what's the fucking point? It doesn't have one, really. It has Dune prophecy.
A lot of it is riding off the fact that it's a pre-existing IP and there's the movies. I just think it's actually worse. I don't believe in this idea that, only 6 episodes means you can't do these things. We always say it's not about the amount of time you have, it's about how you spend it. And if anything, we have been proven in this age where we have shorter amount of episodes that you can tell great stories with only a handful of episodes. And we've talked about this many times over. We're Australian. We are used to shows only having 6 episodes.
Can fucking rock.
Or, having grown up with British TV and Australian TV, most of them are 6 episodes long. 8 episodes long. Maybe 12 if you're lucky. We're used to this. So it's actually even more damning that this show that only has 6 episodes has floundered so much when there's so many of its contemporaries that have as grand ambitions managed to do more with the same amount of time. I brought this up as my example, and I'll bring it up again when I said it in the Discord. Midnight Mass. That's a show with like 7 episodes, a large ensemble of characters.
It knows what it wants to do. It knows the story that it's telling, and everything is feeding into that overall purpose. But you don't always realize exactly how it's doing that and why it's doing that.
And it's also ponderous and has questions about faith and religion and so on and so on and so on, prophecies and so on and so on and so on. And it has its lore and its supernatural stuff. And we could bring up so many other shows on now or ones from different countries that aren't the US that do this all of the time. So I reject it. It has 2 episodes left. Whether they're good or not for us, we'll have to wait and see. Everyone, thank you for tuning in for yet another installment of Rachel and I having a tumultuous time with Dune Prophecy. Are you happy we're covering it?
Yeah, I am enjoying the process, if not the show.
I wasn't expecting this reaction from us. When the first episode dropped, I was actually worried, it's going to be too dull for us. But I found this to be a really rocky ride in a way that you talk about like how predictable this is. I kind of find our reactions the unpredictable part rather than the show. So I'm looking forward to these next 2 episodes. Like I genuinely, after this one, think that it could land this plane. Well, last episode, I don't know. It was like lost at sea. Where are we going? Unless they do another flashback episode next week. So thank you all so much for listening. We will be back next time to talk about Dune Prophecy. And I hope that the Bollywood star finally shows up. Taboo, I think is her name. She's been credited in every single episode, and I don't think she's shown up once. And I know some people online are watching this show purely for her because, Indian actress. A lot of Indian performers get their big followings and their fans will follow any project they're in. And she just hasn't shown up at all. And she's just credited in every episode, but she's not in it. Like, the fact that Brendan Cowell, who was in 2 episodes of the show, didn't get the same treatment because, he's just a Aussie actor, it's just kind of amusing. I actually kind of wish she doesn't show up in the show just so that we can have a chuckle at the fact that there's someone in the opening credits that never is here. But, Rachel, we got worm.
We got wormed.
And have we discussed the untapped value of whale seed? Seed.